Steve Sidwell.
Wow.
Sidwell's trying to trick the keeper. He's fallen and he's scored! Steve Sidwell from 45 yards!
I get the buzz, I get the nervous energy before you go live, but I do miss being on the grass. And I think I'm slowly now going to the other side where I've got my badges, I keep them up to date, and I've got the urge to get back in. So I remember getting home and waiting for this phone to ring, pacing up and down, sweating, waiting for José, who was at the time obviously box office and the José Mourinho. And all of a sudden the phone goes, pick up the phone. Siddy, yes, yeah, José Mourinho, hello José, how are you? First thing he said, what do you want from football? And I said, I remember Arsène saying, if you was my son, I would say, go out and play. Go out and play, because one day this club might buy you back. I remember going, I need to get to the Premier League as quickly as I can. All of a sudden, day quickly turned to night because this shadow appeared by the car door, and it was Big Mick. And I remember undoing the window to about this much. Is there a problem? The thing is, with Crouchy, is you can't take him anywhere. We have a script. We on the podcast, me and Crouchy and Chris Stark, who's absolutely brilliant as well, by the way. But yeah, you obviously realising when Martin was on that we do go off piste, and when we go off piste, we really do go off piste. And we used to play on Sky, which was a great thing as a young 16-year-old. But it was like, wow, Martin Tyler's here. And I remember you come down and like you do your due diligence, and you sat down, you got to know everyone. You sat down with us while I was having lunch. And I remember it as yesterday. You got up and away, and we all was like, that's Martin Tyler.
Hello, the Joy Football Podcast with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett, comes to you today in partnership with Cver Sports, which gives us the chance to talk about fitness and health with our guest, Steve Sidwell.
Wow.
Great Premier League footballer, 200 Premier League games, but a career that went through Arsenal youth team, followed by loan to Brighton, and then all the other sides, promotion with Reading up to the Premier League, Chelsea, Aston Villa, Fulham, Stoke, all in the Premier League. And then he went to Brighton and helped get them up to the Premier League. And Martin, you must have commentated on him so many times.
Oh, Steve and I go back to the Youth Cup, don't we?
Yeah.
But before we come on to that, let's go right back to the joy of football.
Yeah.
It says you were a Crystal Palace fan when you were this high,
yeah,
and then of course you went to Arsenal when you were that high.
Yes.
So how did that pan out in your very early life?
Yeah, so I started playing football from a really young age, 5 or 6 years old. I grew up in Mitcham. We moved out to Croydon, hence the Crystal Palace Association. And then I was at Arsenal, scouted for Arsenal when I was 9 years old, and I was there all the way through, as you know, for the youth team and as a pro. And I remember Ron Nodes and Steve Coppell literally coming round to my house and saying to my mum and dad at like 12, 13, why are you taking your son around the M25 up to North London? Like, he should be at Crystal Palace. Now, at the time, you know, Arsenal was the best academy in the country. And Crystal Palace was obviously on the verge up. So, I was a Palace fan. My first game that I went to was Crystal Palace with my dad, and loved it at Sellers Park. And yeah, we've got strong connections anyway, because at Chipstead Football Club, a non-league team that you'll know mine, there was the likes of Steve Coppell, Steve Kember, Jim Cannon, a lot of old Palace players that were affiliated with that football club as well. So we were surrounded by a lot of old Crystal Palace, but it was one club that I didn't play for on that list, long list.
So Arsenal won through. They were obviously persistent to get you to keep going, get your family to keep taking you there.
Yeah, and again, listen, Arsenal was the best academy in the country. I mean, our youth team, for instance, I mean, you commented on a few of our games, but we blew teams, out the water, and it was the best education, footballing education that I could dream of. Going up there to the JVC Centre, the back of the North Bank, the Clock End at Highbury twice a week. Obviously then it was schoolboys, so it wasn't an academy, so you didn't play every week. You still played for your Sunday team, and then they'd send the occasional scout to keep watching you. Tony Gibbs was my scout. I remember him, he was impeccable. Shirt, tie, the Arsenal tie, he'd stand out on the touch lines, and everything about the Arsenal, which it was then and still is now, just was always done properly.
And in that era, there was a great, legendary coach in charge of Arsenal's youth team in Don Howe.
Yeah. And again, well, even as a 9-year-old, we had the great Geordie Armstrong. He was brilliant, and he was great with us. And
hang on. Geordie Armstrong was an Arsenal legendary winger in the 1970s.
Yeah.
He was,
Yeah. And again, but as a 9-year-old, you don't know that. It's only when you get the train home and you hear my dad speaking and other parents speaking, you go, wow. But again, to have someone like that training us as a 9-year-old, and then as you go through the youth team, we had Neil Banfield, who was brilliant, and Don Howe, who was just a genius, ahead of his time. And I think we must have he was coaching us probably when he was in his late 60s. Yeah. And he's still got his his cap and his whistle when he's going, stop. No, this is how you do the run. And he's sort of curving this run to show the striker that he needs to run in behind. And as he's doing it into the channel, he's slowly falling down, falls over, does a roly-poly, comes up, his glasses are all this way and his cap's there. And he was great. And then you had Don Givens as well, and Liam Brady overlooking the whole academy. So it was all set up to be, as I said, a footballing education. Like you couldn't foul. It just depended on you then and your ability, what level you got to.
Well, you got to the youth team, and you're right. I did commentate, and you always scored. And I think 3 legs of the 4 of the Youth Cup, 2 Youth Cup finals you played in, you scored in 3 of the 4.
Yeah.
Didn't you, if I remember rightly, yeah.
And I remember the day that you come in, because you come in, I think it was the week building up to it. It might have been 2 days before the first one. And it was like, wow. Like, we used to play on Sky, which was a great thing as a young 16-year-old, but it was like, wow, Martin Tyler's here. And I remember you come down and like you do your due diligence, and you sat down, you got to know everyone, you sat down with us, we were always having lunch. And I remember it was yesterday, you got up and away, and we all was like, that's Martin Tyler. Like, he's going to.
That's what he looks like.
You know what I mean? But it is. It's like
it was. Look like.
It was absolutely brilliant, and but I think that's what set me apart in that early stages of my sort of when it got serious, is that I scored in big games. And I think that's when, like your Don Howes and Liam Brady, they was like, you can sort of hang your hat on him, you can rely on him. So I think that was my start of when my trajectory went big.
How close did you get to the first team?
So, I mean, I was training a bit like Arsène was great. He was brilliant. And I think Jermaine Pennant sort of set the tone, and Jay Bothroyd when they was in our age group, and they was getting there. And we had a real hungry youth team to go, well, if he's there, I want to get there. And so tomorrow I'm going to train harder than him that I get there as well. And I was close. I was training with him every day. And Arsène was really good. And he'd always be saying to me, look, you're close, but, you need to do more. And listen, I had Patrick Vieira, Manu Petit in my first year. And then I think the second or third year, I had Edu and Gilberto Silva. So he had 4 World Cup winners straight away. And I knew it was going to be hard, but day in, day out, training with these players, and when you go in, you have to make an impact, you have to make an influence, otherwise they'll just get the next one that go in. And if I'm honest, I was probably off of it at the time. I wasn't good enough to play for the Arsenal first team. I was on the bench a few times, never made an appearance, and I remember once, I think it was a Carling Cup game, and I didn't get on. And I think they might have brought in Moritz Volz instead, and I remember coming out of that game going, I need to leave. I need to get out, and I need to play first team football. If that means to come down, to come back up, then that's what I'm prepared to do.
I want to go through a lot of the managers that you played for when you got first team football. Yeah. I mean, you finished up with Steve Coppell, of course, at Reading. Yeah. Steve Coppell, José Mourinho, Avram Grant, Martin O'Neill, Gerard Houllier, Martin Jol, René Mullenstein, Mark Hughes, Chris Hughton. I mean, top managers. Yeah. How much in your years of football did your work change?
Yeah, do you know what? I that list there, I had to do when I was coaching at Brighton, I had to do I had to put on like a slideshow for the youth team, and it wasn't until I'd done that list and I actually realised myself, because when you're in football, you're in a bubble, and you go. And when I see this, I was like, I've actually played under some top managers there, and as along the way you install a little bit, good or bad, from every single one of them. But I learned, I wanted to be a sponge. I wanted to take so much from every single manager and player as well. I'm sure we'll come on to the clubs that I played under and players that I played with. But I made sure that I watched every single session, even at a young age, and go, right, why are we doing this? What am I getting out of this? What is a team getting out of this? And then if I didn't understand, I would always ask the question as well. And I think that gained my football knowledge from a real young age and all the way through as well.
Did you go in every day saying, what are we doing today and why are we doing it? Because I've coached and players come to that, and sometimes as a coach you have to dig deep to find an answer.
Yeah, I wasn't the one. I'd always throw a question in if it needed to be done, and say, right, if we're building up for this game on the weekend and we're trying to stop this player or we're doing this, why are we doing this? But I would never just do it out of just to sort of make a question out of nothing. I'd always respect all the coaches and all the managers that I played for, and more often than not, starting with Steve Coppell. Steve Coppell was not a coach. Like, he was brilliant. He was just your top class football manager that knew how to manage players and a team, and he'd have a coach that would coach. And when he'd step in, but he'd know when to step in and step out. And again, it's getting to know managers and knowing their boundaries, because that wasn't his forte. He left that to someone else. But when you got him on a match day at 12 o'clock with the build up to the game, you knew that's when he'd become alive. And he was brilliant for me, Steve. But I owe him a lot for my footballing career.
When he went to Brentford and made your league debut?
He was the one who took the he was the one who, I remember him, John Griffin and Wally Downs come to
John Griffin's a famous scout and a black cab driver as well.
Brilliant. John Griff, they come to London Colney. I remember we played Aston Villa behind closed doors, and I remember the three of them walking away, because I knew Steve as well outside of football.
How did that happen?
Well, because I knew his son Mark, and I knew Steve again just through being a local lad. And when I was at Chipstead, I remember when I was a boy, I remember going to the bar, getting a Coke and a Mars bar, and I knew who Steve Coppell was. He was obviously the manager of Crystal Palace, and he would come up and just go, "You enjoying it at Arsenal?" Like, just little slight ones, like just I wouldn't say tapping up, but just And I'd be like, yeah. So when I remember he made the phone call to say, "You're going to come to Brentford on loan." But Liam Brady pulled me in the office first and said, "Right, you're going to go to Brentford tomorrow on loan. Here's Steve Coppell's number. Give him a call." And I was like, brilliant. I remember getting in the car, calling Steve, and Steve said, "Right, come in tomorrow. Listen, we can't afford," because I was a pro then at Arsenal. I don't know what my appearance was. Something silly at Arsenal, might have been £5,000. And he said, "Listen, we can't afford your appearance money. How about, is 200 quid all right?" And I was like, "Steve, listen, I don't care what it is. I just want to come and play." And he was like, "Brilliant. That's it." And he was the one that really took the chance, but give me my chance.
But Steve Coppell's style was hard running, in your face, get it up to the big men up front, and it was very different from the Wenger style, and the Arsenal style. So how much did your daily work change?
So I'd say I probably more suited the latter style than obviously the real slick passing, because I was a good player, but at that time with Arsenal, when it was literally all crisp, slick passing. Listen, we had a good team, and I could pass the ball. I'm probably doing myself a bit of justice here, but I could really mix it as well. And I think that was my natural game, to go in, win the ball back. I had that knack of just sensing danger, win the ball back, get it, give it to the good players, let them go and win us the game. And if I can chip in with the goal, or I can save, sliding tackles and save us goals, then that's my job done. And I was happy to do that. So going on loan as a 16, 17-year-old to Brentford in League Two opened your eyes, because it's men's football. But I loved it. And I think I gained the respect really quickly from them senior pros at Brentford especially, because they didn't see this flash young kid coming out of Arsenal that was going to fancy down his way around the pitch. I got stuck in. I was a team player, and I think I'd done everything for the team before myself. So that probably put me.
We always ask our guests about their league debut. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
Yours, because obviously you were looking for it, and that's why we went down those divisions to have it.
Yeah. So it was Bury at home on a Tuesday night. I think it was 5-0 or 5-1. Didn't have a particularly great game. Probably the nerves got to me more than anything. But then I followed it up on the weekend. Ironically enough, it was against Reading away, and played really, really well. And I think that was probably the seed that was planted at Reading, because I went there about 18 months after. So But that season that I had at Brentford was to gain first team experience. Then I come back and then I went to Belgium, to Beveren, where they had the affiliation. Played with Yaya Touré out in Beveren, and see him on that journey as well. And then come back and then went to Brighton on loan in the Championship. And I look back now, as a 19-year-old playing the Championship, I played for Brighton. I think I played 10 games, scored 6 goals, and then Reading came in and put the bid into Arsenal. It was accepted. I thought, right, I need to go and speak to Arsène about this, and Pat Rice. I went up to London Colney and said, look, what's going on? And they just said, look, we'll give you another contract. We'd like you to stay, but we don't know when or if you're going to get there. So we would advise, if you, I remember Arsène saying, if you was my son, I would say, go out and play. Go out and play, because one day this club might buy you back. And I always held him to that. I said, right, okay. And then I went to Reading, and the rest is history. But I remember being there as a 19-year-old in the Championship, being so naive, thinking, I'm too good for this. But not in an arrogant way. I'd mix it, I'd do the hard yards. But I remember going, I need to get to the Premier League as quickly as I can. Now, it took me a number of years. I didn't play in the Premier League, I think, till I was 24. So
I did your debut. It was a famous game, wasn't it? It was a really famous Reading. You'd helped Reading get promotion.
Yeah.
And it was against Middlesbrough.
Yes.
And managed by Gareth Southgate.
Yeah.
And you had to come from behind to
2-0 down at half time.
2-0 down, yeah. And 1-3-2.
1-3-2, scored as well on that day.
Yeah.
Jumped in the crowd, got booked, as you do. So, but yeah, that year was a real surreal year, because I'd done so well the season before in getting Reading promoted. I think I scored 11 or 12 goals, had a really good season, go into the last year of my contract, and we sat down and the club was like, well, we're not sure. And I was like, oh, all right, okay. And I was like, we're going to the Premier League. And I remember sitting down with my agent and my family going, this is a big gamble, this. And I was like, I'm going to see this out. And a bit of me got sort of stuck up to go, well, if they're not sure, then let's throw it back on them and say, right, okay, we'll just see as well. And after every game in that Premier League season, my first one, I got a call from the manager that we'd played. So I remember we played Middlesbrough in that first game. I think on the Wednesday, Gareth called me at home and was like, look, what's the situation? Would you want to come to Middlesbrough? And that was the whole ride of that first Premier League season. I think the only managers we didn't speak to was Sir Alex Ferguson, Gerard Houllier, I think might have been or Rafa Benitez, who might have been at Liverpool, and Martin Jol, who was at Tottenham. So those only 3 clubs that I didn't speak to after every single game during that season.
You played almost every game.
Well, I did, yeah. And then eventually when the club come to me and was like, oh, we want to sit down and negotiate a new deal, I was like, well, we'll see now. But I would say as well, Steve Coppell was manager, and where I had a good connection with him outside of football, he did pull me and just say, look, please just keep me informed of what you're doing. I think I know what you're going to do, but just even if you need advice for clubs or where you're going to go or thinking of going, just so I know what I need to plan for come the end of this season and next season.
We might have talked after that game, the game at the Medeski Stadium, but I remember more Steve's interview, because this was like, wow, you're in the Premier League, Reading in the Premier League, and you won this game. Yeah. And he come from behind to do it, and he was so deadpan. Yeah. There was none of the sort of whooping it up. And I get partly his personality, and of course it was a sensible thing to do, because you can rob for your own back.
Yeah. And I think I took that from Steve as well. Never get too high, never get too low. Just in football, as well as anyone, both of you, it changes week to week. And if you keep on that level playing field, then you'll be all right. A lot of people don't realise that the end of that first Premier League season for Reading, we finished, I think it was a point just outside Europe. We finished 8th in the Premier League for a newly appointed promoted team that spent, I think, £250,000 on Sol Ki-Hyun. I think it might have been £1 million on Sol Ki-Hyun, which is a remarkable, incredible achievement. And I love my time.
It made a lot of players. Nicky Shorey played for England, didn't he? Players who really. I love that when teams go up and they haven't played in the Premier League. The players haven't played in the Premier League. You might like Sunderland have gone up now with a lot of newbies as far as the Premier League is concerned. A lot of new players from other countries, but to see how people adapt. Were you aware of the step that you'd finally at 24 were making from all the lower division football you played, even in the Championship.
Yeah. We rode that wave. We had we still the history, the record-breaking points now, 106 points, and we was on such a high coming out of that Championship season that. Again, we had a young squad that socialised together on and off the pitch, which I always advocate is a brilliant thing because that gets you points throughout the season. And never once did we doubt ourselves. From the manager to the team to individuals, we was like we took some big scalps. I mean, we drew against Man United at home, we beat Man City away, we beat Spurs home, and we was just riding that wave week in, week out. We used to have people that used to come in and help psychologically with the newspaper articles, positive and negative. But yeah, I think we all backed ourselves to perform well. And again, like you said there, Nicky Shorey getting in the England team, I think he made his debut against Brazil at Wembley, was just the icing on the cake coming into the season.
You came to Chelsea then, and you went through a pre-season that would have been different from any pre-season that you'd gone through before. Just talk to us about the different methods of getting fit.
So, I mean, the pre-season for me, I didn't mind. Naturally fit. I'd do obviously work off season as well, but I knew going into Chelsea's pre-season was going to be different. I knew JT and Frank and Joe Cole and Sean Wright-Phillips from outside of Chelsea. And I remember JT calling me when I'd signed early June and just said, look, can't wait to see you on the training pitch. Get ready because it's going to be full tilt from day one. And I was like, wow, all right, if he's saying that then I think he was just planting the seed that elite mindset, it starts as soon as you go through the door. And the biggest thing that I would say with José's pre-season was that when you walked onto the pitch, it was there. It was done. All the cones were out, all the poles were out. You'd know it. You go out and you'd go, wow, this looks incredible. What's that over there? Oh, what are we doing over there? And if one cone or if one pole was out, you'd know as well. The clipboard was down. He was at his staff. What's going on? You know, if there wasn't, the ball wasn't in the correct position. And that was what I really quickly learned. Was the attention to detail from the session was there, but then the output from every single player from day one was just on it. And it actually probably took me a good 3 months to get to a level where because I was miles off it at the start. I was like, wow, I am so far from this. So it took me a while, not fitness wise I'd say, but just from a mindset mentality monster what José created to get to that level.
And surely you'd have done a lot of running previously. But now there wasn't anything like that.
Well, the whole thing was let the ball do the running. And we do our runs and we get base runs in, but it was all about moving the ball, moving the opposition, moving the team, making sure we're fit, but the ball was basically our yardage. And yeah, it was just every session was just, and again, meaningful what we was doing, what we was all about, and just the drive from the players. Again, like we look at player and teams nowadays, and you look at how many teams have got leaders in their teams, and you go, well, there's a few that's probably got one or two or three. You look back then, not just Chelsea, but Arsenal's and Man United, you go through 7-8 players that are in the tunnel that you look next to and you go, oh, wow, it's going to be a big game today. And I think that was when I realised at Chelsea, when you had JT, Frank, Didier, Petr Cech, Makelele, Essien, you know, the list was, you could go one after the other and go, wow, these are, you know, on it. And I remember really quick at the beginning of the season when we dropped points and the boots would go down the dressing room and it'd be like, we've given Man United an inch there and we can't give them an inch. I'm thinking, well, we'll claw that back throughout the season, but in them days it was hard. It was really hard. And
you got the number 9 shirt, which looking back with history now, there's been a lot of talk about Chelsea number 9's good and bad, but as number 9 stands for as a striker, but how did it land on a midfield player?
So I think this was I thought it was José's mind games at the start. So we flew to LA, didn't we? On the first day of pre-season, which again was something completely new to me. And I remember getting on the team bus from Cobham going to Farnborough Airport or Gatwick, wherever he was going. And as I walked on, José was at the front and he stopped me and he said, Sidders, he said, you got the number 9 shirt this season. So again, totally left field. I thought, right, is this one of his mind games? Because I knew what he was like and seeing him in the press and the previous few seasons. So I was like, okay, that's fine, not a problem. Sort of backing it. And then I remember sitting down with the kit man and I said to him, José just said I got the number 9 shirt. Because obviously when you normally sign for a team, you see what shirts are available. I remember 14 being available. And normally you can go into the kit man and go, look, can I have that shirt if it's vacant? Because Jeremy had left the season before. And Big Tell said, yeah, you've got number 9. And I was like, and do you know what? At the time, it wasn't as if I went, oh God, or it didn't faze me at all. I was happy to wear any number. But I remember when the revealing came out, we was in LA and I held up the number 9 shirt, and I remember my friends and my dad, who's a big Chelsea fan, saying, what number you got? And I remember saying number 9. I was like, what? You got the number 9 shirt? And at the time I didn't think nothing of it, but looking back now, I think where José was, and he wanted to kick on again and probably wanted more funds to go and get a striker, and maybe he didn't get the funds, and he took, I think it was me, to tell Ben Ahim and Claudio Pizarro on a free. I think that was his dig maybe to the board to go, if you've not given me a number 9, I'll give it to the free transfer, the midfielder from Reading. So there's José.
When you were talking,
I've never asked him that, by the way. I would like to ask him.
When you were talking earlier about playing every game you played for Reading in that last season, that people were calling you up. So were you in touch with Chelsea during that period?
So I remember playing the 2 games I played against Chelsea. I played really well at home and away, and Peter Kenyon touched base first of all, and
Chief.
Yeah, and then I remember speaking to him on the phone, leaving training, and I said, look, can I speak to José? And he was like, yeah, cool. He goes, I'll get José to call you. And this was near enough to the back end of the season now. So I remember getting home and waiting for this phone to ring, getting nervous. I remember taking my top off. I remember walking in my living room, which is probably the size of this little terrace garden here, pacing up and down, sweating, waiting for José, who was at the time, obviously, box office and the José Mourinho. And obviously the phone goes, pick up the phone. Siddy, yes. Yeah, José Mourinho. Hello, José, how are you? The first thing he said, what do you want from football? And I said, what do you mean? He said, what do you want to get out of football? And I said, well, I want to win things, play as high as I can and have a good career and look after my family. And he said, you signed for Chelsea. He said, because if you play, he said, you win things. He said, if you don't play, you get paid up your money and you go and play somewhere else. And I was like, where do I sign? We both had a laugh, and then he said, what are you doing tonight? And I said, nothing. He said, right, you're coming to my house. So I was living in Reading at the time with my wife, and so he sent a car. Me and my wife and my agent met us in the hotel at Stamford Bridge. Went downstairs, got in the back of Brian's car, security Brian, and I was in the back, and it was all a bit of this top secret. He took his jacket off, put it on a coat hanger, put it on the window. Why I didn't have blacked out windows, I don't know. But there was a big coat sort of shielding me, and we're driving into town. Didn't know where José lived. We're going around Belgravia Square and here and there, and we're going around this sort of roundabout 5 times. I'm thinking, what is going on? So before you know it, we pull up at this Mews. I go to get out, they say, wait. And then they all making sure they're sort of like nodding all the security down there, and they open my car door, they usher me down this Mews, the front door's open, we go straight into his house, into his living room, sit down, and we're sitting there, and then 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes passed, 15 minutes passed. I'm thinking, he doesn't know we're here. I can hear his wife cooking in the kitchen. The little dog that he had, he was on my wife's lap. She's like stroking this dog. My agent's going, and all of a sudden you see there's like an open staircase, open sort of view. And he walks in down, a pair of jeans, pair of slippers and a t-shirt. And you can hear him go, what? He's here already? And he come in, he's really apologetic. And then he sat down and we had a chat. And then after about 5 minutes, he just got a book out. And again, it's very much like this now in terms of attention to detail. But back then he got this book out and it said, Chelsea FC 2007, 2008, and he gave it to me and it opened up. It said day 1, July 3rd, fly to LA, rest, July 4th, and it had the whole lot done. And this was back in, I don't know, April.
So that would be the whole pre-season.
The whole pre-season, and obviously the games hadn't been done, and I was just blown away. You know, I just thought, wow, this is the level of of the elite now that I'm getting into. And I still see José now, and every time I see him, he's brilliant. I love speaking to him. But it was the shame that I was there at Chelsea when it was probably one of their worst seasons in terms of winning trophies in its current history.
So it didn't last long.
Well, it didn't. Yeah, I was there for a year. So obviously José left about October time, and Avram Grant come in. And I remember when Avram Grant come in, and he was there already, wasn't he, from pre-season in a higher role. And I think that was the friction straight away. And I couldn't feel it at the time. I didn't really feel that there was any real bad tension between José and the board and the players. It all still seemed okay. The performances wasn't great at the early stages, and then when he left, and then when Avram took over, I remember JT coming down to the dressing room and going, "Lads, Roman said Avram's going to be in charge." And I remember saying, "Look, no, I'm not too sure, but I know with what I've got in this dressing room, we need to pull together and get us through this, because I don't know where this is going to go." And again, I am sort of rabbit in the headlights here. I'm sort of in the dressing room going, bearing in mind that Chelsea, I've supported Chelsea, and the players that are in that dressing room are my heroes and idols in terms of Ballack and all of them. And going, wow, this feels like a real siege mentality now. Is that JT's grasped us, and it's us v them straight away. Now, obviously, that in that season we lost the Champions League in Moscow, and lost the League Cup to Spurs in the final, and got knocked out to Barnsley in the FA Cup, and lost the league by a point or two to United. And yeah, it was a shame that I went to Chelsea and come away with nothing than go there and win something to come away with. But I'd rather, people say to me, "Do you regret going there?" And I say never, because I could have not signed for Chelsea. I've got 4 children now, 3 of them boys, 1 of them's a girl. And one of them, I would have regretted the day one of them gone to me. I would have said to them, "Oh, I could have signed for Chelsea." And they said, "Why didn't you?" And I would have gone, "I don't know." So I'd rather have done it. It didn't work out than not done it at all and try and compete back at that highest level than not give it a go.
So how did Villa fit in the elite scale when you obviously that was your next move?
Yep. So Scolari come in at the end of the season, and we done pre-season.
That's at Chelsea, Scolari.
Yeah, Chelsea at Scolari. Yeah, and then and Martin O'Neill. we had a few phone calls at the back end of the season, because the direction that Aston Villa were going at the time under Randy Lerner, and there was a big investment and there was a big push for young English talent, and then the squad that we built there. Stuart Downing, James Milner, Ashley Young, Gabriel Bonglahor, myself. Then you had Emil Heskey, Brad Friedel. We had a real good blend of experience and hungry young players, players that wanted to get back into the England fold, or for me to get into that England team. Was on that brink of Europe. I think finished 6th in the previous seasons, and I was like, this is a challenge that I want. You know, I was going there to play as well, and unfortunately, it's just one of them clubs that just didn't work out for me for a number of reasons. Probably off the pitch more so. My middle son at the time, who was just born, he caught meningitis, so he was in a hospital in London, and I was to and from Birmingham, and it was hard for me. I didn't know how to sort of navigate that, and probably didn't have. I had the support network around me in terms of family, but the person that I was always the one. No, I'm fine. I can deal with this, and I didn't deal with it, and that affected my football. And then I think mine and Martin O'Neill's relationship really broke down as well.
How did that affect you? I mean, was it fatigue? Was it injuries?
I mean, I got a few injuries. I mean, I got injured first in my first pre-season game for Villa. I think I tore my calf, and then I didn't make my debut until September, October time. And I think that was just the stem of me just never getting going. Again, being professional, as professional I was, there was a few things that I'd done that wasn't probably professional. And I remember just going off the rails a little bit, going, this is not me. And it's such a shame. I really wanted to try and make it right, because that is my biggest regret, that platform that I was given there at Aston Villa, the size of the club, I didn't know how big it was until I got there. I loved playing at Villa Park. The training ground was great. The squad that we had was great. You know, I didn't achieve what I should have done there. And in the end, it was the worst part of my career. I was probably on the most money I was on in my career, but it was the most unhappiest I was and the worst that I'd felt, because I knew I weren't right. And then as soon as I went to Fulham and I was back home, or just even getting out of Villa, I remember my first session at Fulham, and it could have not necessarily Fulham because it was back home. That could have been anywhere. At one point, I was going to Wolves because I just needed to get out. And I remember my first session, it was just like the chains were off, and I was just back to playing normal again.
Just on Villa, now that Tottenham have won a trophy, are Villa the great underachievers? Because they haven't won a trophy since the mid-90s when they were up on the League Cup. And they are, for people who've never been to Villa Park, we keep talking about this.
We love it.
I love it.
As broadcasters, as much as you love playing it.
Yeah. I mean, people go, it's a sleeping giant, and it's a huge, huge football club. And over time, it's had huge investment where it should have gone on and competed. And like even when I was there, we lost the League Cup in the final to United when Vidic brought down, I think it was Cver Sports that should have got sent off. In the end, we lost. James Milner scored a penalty, but we should have won that game. We got knocked out to Chelsea in the semi-final of the FA Cup.
Yeah, it was 0-0 after an hour.
Yeah, so we was close, just couldn't get it over the line. And you're right. Over years, you've got to say from where they've been, they should have won. They should have won something. The manager that they got now, you've got to say if there's anyone more equipped to get them something, especially in Europe, which is where they're performing again this season, then they could and should do it. The fans certainly deserve it, because it's a set of fans I love playing for. And I love playing for that club, especially at home. Villa Park is a special ground. But yeah, they probably are at the moment underachieving.
Was it getting back in London? Was it your son recovering from the meningitis? Did that all fall in? When Fulham was a happy place.
Yeah, I think it all just fell into place. Like again, the story of me signing for Wolves, I was on the medical table doing a medical. I look back and I give Mick. I'd spoke to Mick a good few months beforehand.
Mick McCarthy,
and he said, "Look, let's get you out. I'll get you playing." And we shook hands. I give Mick my word that I was going to sign, and I was on the bed doing the medical with all the players in the dressing room, because they played the night before when they beat Chelsea 1-0 on a Friday night up at Molineux.
Thank you for reminding me.
And I knew some of the players, Kevin Doyle, Stephen Hunt that I had at Reading, and the tap come on the dressing room door, and my agent popped his head in and said, "You need to have a word." And I come out, and all the lads were like, "Oh, he's not signed yet. He's not signed. It's not done." And I was like, "What's the matter?" And he said, I spoke to Bobby Zamora, bearing in mind, in the morning. One of the good friends of mine, on the way to the medical. He was on his way into Fulham. He's obviously told Mark Hughes and Eddie Nezetsky, the assistant, and Mark Hughes called. So my agent said, "I've just spoke to Mark Hughes. Fulham want you to sign you. They want you to go down and do the medical." And I was like, "So I've given me a word. Like I can't." I said, "Let's go and speak to Mark Hughes." So we went to my agent's car, got him on the phone. I said, "Mark, look, I can't come down and it not be done, and then I'm left in limbo." He said, "Get down the M40. I said, "We'll get it done. It's all agreed." We spoke to Villa. All of a sudden, it was a day like today, quickly turned to night, because this shadow appeared by my car door, and there was a tap on the window, and it was Big Mick. And I remember undoing the window to about this much. And I remember his voice was, "Is there a problem?" And I remember going, "Yeah, there might be, Mick." And he went, and I'll never forget, he went, "Come on, let's go and sort it out like men." And I went, "All right." So we literally got out of the car. I remember walking to his office, and he said, "What's up?" And I said, "Look, Mick, Fulham have been on the phone." I said, "It's a chance for me to go back home." So I won't say what he said, but he basically said, "If I could throw you out this office head first, then I would do." But he understood, because I think he had family back in London when he was there.
Yeah, he's lived in London a lot. Maybe all through a big period of his life.
That's
maybe
it.
Still.
Yeah. So I went to Fulham, and but I was really close to going to Wolves. So to get out of Villa at that time, it was important to me, and it all just fell into place of going back to Fulham, going back home, living at home, and then the recovery of my son as well. And it all just seemed like the shoulder and the weight. I remember it just being like dropped. But I loved my time at Villa, like the dressing room and what I learned, and even relationships with managers that you don't get on with, and how you develop and how you overcome that. You know, I learned how to deal with that on and off the pitch. Probably not at the time, but maybe a few seasons after. Then you look back at it and then you start to sort of recalculate.
Of your 200 Premier League appearances, almost half of them were with Fulham.
Yeah.
So relatively late.
Yeah.
In the piece, really.
Yeah, I look at the 200 and I go, I should have played more. Again, like I didn't play in the Premier League till I was 23, 24, and I played every game with Reading. And yeah, the Villa one was a big one because I was there for 3 years. It was very much stop-start and injuries and not not consistently playing. But Fulham, I felt as though when I got there, I was at home. And I knew when you walk into Fulham that a lot of players say this, that you just feel like you play freely. And I felt I'd done that at Fulham.
You, the way you talk, you had a lot of summers in which you weren't quite sure where you were going to be. During those summers, what did you do to stay fit?
Do you know what? There actually isn't. I mean, I see my contract out twice. So I went on a free twice. One was going to Chelsea, which I knew I was going to Chelsea. So that summer was fine. And the other time was when I left Fulham and I went to Stoke. And again, I knew what I was doing. So we talk about free agents and going on a free. There's a difference, isn't there, of having a summer off, not knowing where you're going to go, waiting for the phone to ring,
having to train on your own,
to then knowing where you're going to go and going into somewhere ready. So yeah, summers off, I used to have a good break, and then the last 2 or 3 weeks get ready to go and hit pre-season hard.
Sparing your blushes, you look like you could play in the Premier League now. So you've obviously looked after your body, partly because that's what you're told to do when you're a professional footballer at that level. But
yeah,
obviously more sort of intrinsic in Steve Sidwell about getting the best out of you every day of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I think again I was naturally fit from just being young, and pre-season never scared me. I knew what it was all about. But I think that was my main thing out of football, that I just got 100. I used to love going to training, and I got out of training every day. A lot of managers, a lot of coaches would pull me to the side and go, I need you to drive training today. Whether he was in a bad spell or whether he was in a good spell, and set the standard. I think a lot of coaches would lean on me to go, it's going to be a tough one today. Make sure the lads, when we're at it, and we sort of keep a standard. So I took that as a compliment, which made me train harder, because I always used to go, well, the harder I train and the ceiling I push, the fitter I'll be. And that was always me, that I had to train how I played. If I didn't train well Monday to Friday, or if I had a bad few, like the Thursday and Friday, if I just come off it a little bit, not meaning to, but just wasn't quite right, I'd always go, I need to do some runs. And I'll do some box-to-boxes just to sort of refresh the mind and be right for match day.
And what did you do in gymnasiums?
To be fair, again, in the gym, it wasn't a big thing. When I was at Chelsea, the gym wasn't a big thing, and not many players went to the gym. It wasn't like it was a collective. Bridgie was always in the gym. Obviously, that was him, Wayne. But like now, you see all the dynamics and the power, and that it wasn't really about towards the latter stages. Yes, when I was at Brighton, but again, gym, it wasn't about being strong. It was just probably about the fitness work that you do outside. So I tick over in the gym, but mainly it was just pushing myself, and more so pushing others around me on the training pitch.
Challenge you on this in one respect. Stoke.
Yeah.
How did you manage to keep training when we're in a part of Surrey where your good mate and our friend Peter Crouch lives just up the road, and a well-known story that he was travelling up and back, and you were obviously a bit of a sidekick in that sense as well. So how did that fit into your discipline, if you like, for fitness? We travelled up probably two days a week from London, Tuesday and a Thursday more so, and we trained at 11 o'clock. So we'd get the 8 o'clock train from Euston, get in for 9:20 at Stoke-on-Trent. The training ground was right next to the station. We was in the training ground for 9:45, a good hour and 15 before training, in the gym, prep, because that's when it started coming. That's when I realised, right, okay, these are the dynamics now of football, whether it was just mobility or your own sort of strength program. And
it was fine. I felt fit. Mark Hughes knew he was travelling up a couple of days and said, look, if I see that it's taking an edge on training, then we're going to have to take this away and you're going to have to stay up a few days. Never did. You know, we slept on the train, we ate well, it was fine. And yeah, I felt was probably as fit as I was at Stoke when I was 32, 33 as I did when I was 24. So
I shared the experience that you had for 2 years on one occasion, because you were there. I came up with Crouchy on the train from here to the podcast that we were on, and you're the co-host now and everything, and went back with him on the train as well. So I know in a little way what it's like to travel with. I got the odd word in, but
no, it's, do you know what the thing is with Crouchy is you can't take him anywhere. And I remember we was going there, and you're bearing in mind we're travelling to Stoke at rush hour in London on the Underground, because you have to do a couple of stops. And at the time, I bought this sort of flat cap, because just in the winter, really, to keep my head warm. And he was like, I remember saying, Sid, that's a great idea. I might do that, because he was obviously getting he was getting hounded, but it was also a case of a lot of people going, is that really Peter Crouch on the Underground at 7:30 on the way to Euston? Anyway, he bought this flat cap. It was the worst thing he could have done. He may as well have had an arrow going, my name is Peter Crouch. So yeah, but listen, Crouchy looked after his body as well. He played into, I think he was 39, maybe nearly even 40. So as long as you've got a love for the game and your enthusiasm's there and you're pretty lucky with injuries, that's the unfortunate part for me, is that when I retired, it was taken from me. I didn't leave football on my own terms, which actually probably took me a while to get over.
I saw you doing your badges at Chipstead. So where's that? And of course, you're now a well-known broadcaster as well, not just the Crouchy podcast, but on mainstream TV as well. So how are you now? What is Steve Sidwell today?
So I love the broadcasting element, and I think when I retired, when I took up coaching, because I'd done 3 years coaching at Brighton as well as all the TV stuff, and I remember Eddie Niedzecki, who was a part of the Fulham coaching staff with Mark Hughes, and he had me at Arsenal when I was young as well. Never forget when he said to me at Stoke, he said, just make sure you're busy. When you leave the game, make sure you've got a structure, make sure you're busy, because that's when it can all sort of spiral. And it actually scared me. So when I retired, I was probably doing too much. I was doing near enough full-time at Brighton and the media stuff as well. When it was a case of going, right, what do I like doing? And the media side of it and the broadcasting side fitted more with the family because of my young kids and having time at home and picking and choosing sort of the days where you want to work. Whereas the football side, you know, when you're in, and speaking to Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard and Scott Parker's, they kind of put you off a little bit, because they say once that phone's on, you know, it's on 24/7. But I don't think I was ready to go into the coaching side then, because I think where I had the 2 spinal surgeries and had to finish abruptly and come away from the game, it probably affected me more mentally than I'd known. And I wanted to have a rest and a break from football, but still be a part of football, and not be in it, or sort of have a stranglehold on me. And yeah, the broadcasting side of it I loved. It's the closest thing you can do other than coaching, and especially when you're in the studio, or when you're pitch side, or when you're in the studio at a ground. It's brilliant. So I get the buzz, I get the nervous energy before you go live, but I do miss being on the grass. And I think I'm slowly now going to the other side, where I've got my badges, I keep them up to date, and I've got the urge to get back in. And a lot of people say to me, football needs you. Like you should be involved in coaching or managing or being some capacity. And I feel as though I do want to give it a go, and at what level that will be, or where it will be, whether it be an academy at the start, and then if someone gets a job where you go with them, I don't know. But there is an urge to get back on the grass and get the boots out.
That's interesting. A South London ex-player said to me, Colin Pates, said to me that he believes every professional footballer has a long career, when they retire, gets some level of depression.
Yeah. Because
it's just such a change in your life, and it's been such a buzz. Would you say that happened?
Oh, 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. And every player will get that. And I certainly had that, because football to me, and still was everything. So in my career, I was one of the players that had to just be on it 100%. When I went to Chelsea, I remember being on the team bus. I remember hearing Frank Lampard talking about the property development that he was doing, the business calls other people were doing. That's when I first started going away from football. Not going away from it, but having a different interest. And going, I should maybe try some different hobbies, and tried it, and bought some property, done this, and then if I had 2 or 3 bad games, or I'd be like, that's got to go. I'd go into sort of stocks and shares and buy some stuff, and then I probably sold stocks and shares years and years ago that I should have kept. That probably put me in a millionaire now. I thought, no, I've got to be on it. Like, that was what I had to do.
People don't understand. I think the whole life, when you've played football at any sort of level, when it stops, there's nothing that really can replace it.
You can't replace it.
I heard Alan Shearer say, since I scored my last goal, there's been nothing in my life that's replaced that feeling.
I don't know how his wife feels about that.
No, but that's the point I'm making, really. He said that in an open forum, and I think we all feel it in our way. And Neil's in his 70s, and doesn't really look it, I suppose, but 80s more. And I've just had a birthday with a landmark on it, and I still feel the same. I still dream about playing football. I don't dream about commentating. I don't dream about coaching. Playing, it's that the togetherness, the dressing room feeling.
It's the whole thing.
It's really hard to explain to non-football people how that drags you in and keeps you in.
Well, it is a bubble. I always say that footballers get, they can get a bit of a reputation when they come out of being a bit obnoxious, or just because they've earned hundreds of millions or tens of millions or even millions, that they should be happy. Like you said, that you cannot replicate, whether it's scoring a goal, whether it's playing at Old Trafford or the big stadiums, or for me it was the little things. For me it was the aches and pains. It was the playing away on a Tuesday night, getting shuffling upstairs to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, wake up the next morning and you're getting out of bed, and then you have to go again, and the smell of the grass, the training ground, the camaraderie that you have with players that you probably see more than your own family. You can't replicate that. And when you finish, that's it. It's done. Now, at the time when I finished, it was more of a release for me, because I had the 2 spinal surgeries, and it just got too much for me that I couldn't play again. It was more of a, like, I've tried 8 months of rehab and it's done. But after 2 or 3 months, it slowly creeps in. It's like, right, what are we going to do? What are you going to do? Because that's gone now. That chapter's gone, and you quickly learn that football owes you nothing in life.
And even if you go into a coaching team, it's not the same as being in the dressing room when you've won a game. Because as a coach, when you win a game, or 5 minutes later you think, we've got another game coming up. As a player, you can go and enjoy it until you have to come back training the next day. I think about it. It's such a special time, and a privilege, and you've given so much pleasure in the different clubs. 200 should have been 400 maybe. But it's still 200 still, and it's something to be very proud of.
Yeah, no, it is. I look back, and I think it's only ever when you come out of your career, again, because you've got the blinkers on, especially for me, that you realise, do you know what? It was actually a good ride, and I loved it. And I think
you finished with a promotion at Brighton, back into the Premier League.
Yeah, and that was a good high to go out of as well, because again, knowing that club, knowing Tony Bloom and the people behind it, and creating a bit of history for them was great, and seeing where they are now again is remarkable. But I think when I go back to clubs, and I went back to Fulham on the weekend and was given an award, is when that happens, you get an affiliation to go, do you know what? Me personally, every club that I was at, whether it was Aston Villa where I didn't play a lot, I think fans will appreciate that when I was on the pitch, I give everything for the team. I was never just one for myself. It was always for the team first and for the fans.
Show us the award, because you got it.
So, I went to Fulham on the weekend and was presented with this Forever Fulham. So I think it was for if you got over 100 games, you was part of the Forever Fulham club. And there's a little plaque in there with your appearance. I think it says 114 appearances, 17 goals for Fulham. So again, they make a day out of it. I took my kids and my daughter, who she missed sort of the back end of my career because obviously coming too late, and for her to go on the grass at Craven Cottage was nice, and she walked around with this and
they won.
They won. It wasn't the greatest of games, I've got to say. I think it was last on Match of the Day, but they got the victory. Which again, you realise that it's do or die. The Premier League, you have to get results, and they had to get that result against Leeds. They got it.
The Peter Crouch podcast.
Yeah.
How much do you prepare and how much do you just go in there and it's the dressing room banter? The dressing room banter. I've got to talk. The year that Steve was at Chelsea, for a lot of it, I think Ashley Cole was injured. We look at Ashley Cole. Who would have thought he'd become a football coach when he was a player?
No.
And here he is now. He's the assistant to England under-21s when they've twice won the Euros.
Yeah.
But if I look back at Ashley Cole, in some ways, it was obvious he was going to become a coach because he spent all his time when he wasn't training in the physio's room. He'd be the first in and the last out, sitting there for the banter.
Yeah.
That was his life. And everyone thought that he was this big-headed guy doing this and doing that. But actually, he just wanted to be in the environment.
Absolutely true.
With the banter. And you know that. He was in the... He was the...
Well, I grew up with Ashley. He was 2 years above me, and he was the first one that when he got in the first team, we was all like, wow, like Coley's in there. Let's like we could be the next one. But, I mean, I was blown away because obviously he went and done his career, and obviously we played again with each other at Chelsea, but then when he went to LA and back and Derby and stuff, I bumped into him at a restaurant just down the road, and as I'm walking through, he was sitting down and he pulled me and he was like, "Hello, Sid, you right?" Yeah, we got chatting, and within about 45 seconds he had the salt and pepper pot out about doing this team shape of this session that he'd just done, and I was like, "Ash, I can't, is this really you?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I love it." And that was him, though. And again, like the passion for it, and that's what you want. You want these people in football.
Energy, isn't it?
Yeah. But going back to your original question, yeah, we do prep. We have a script. We on the podcast, me and Crouchy and Chris Stark, who's absolutely brilliant as well, by the way. But yeah, we obviously realising when Martin was on that we do go off piste, and when we go off piste, we really do go off piste. I think that's why it works, because we try and get the most out of people.
You put the clip out where I go, "Well, you're the virgin, Crouchy."
Yeah.
That was certainly not what I was expecting to say when I came on your podcast.
We tee a few people up, and Joe White is my name. I leave every morning going to do that, and I say to my wife, "I'm going to work," and she says, "Don't you dare call that work." But it is, and I enjoy it, and I get the most out of it.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I have got a letter to read. Are we going to do that?
Yeah.
Here we got time.
Yeah.
Listen to it.
Right. Okay. Shall I introduce it?
Okay.
Ladies, gentlemen, and everybody else, this is Martin Tyler's Letter from the Gantry.
Letter from the Gantry.
Reaching the gantry at Brentford's G-Tech Community Stadium is as easy as it gets in the Premier League. There's a lift from the level known as B1, where the television trucks are all parked, up to floor 4 at the top of the main stand. Then comes a short walk along a smartly decorated corridor into the spacious platform itself. There are several excellent broadcast points to satisfy we commentators who crave a good view, and space for ourselves and our co-commentators in which to operate. At the Chelsea game, my partner was the sharp-eyed, analytically minded Courtney Sweetman-Kirk. The hard part, if you're not in the know, is finding the stadium itself, squeezed in as it is between a motorway flyover, a couple of train lines and blocks of flats. The big Chiswick roundabout on the A4 can be a distraction too. Get it wrong and you could be heading up the North Circular or going south of the Thames over Kew Bridge. Taking your eyes off the road is even more dangerous than usual. If you look for a sighting of the stadium from your car, you will not find one. This is the 6th year since the move from the far more spottable Griffin Park, famed for having a pub outside each of the stadium's 4 corners. It is Brentford's 5th consecutive season in the top flight, equalling their only previous spell either side of the Second World War. These are the only seasons in which the Bees have faced the Blues of Chelsea in the league. After the recent 2-2, the record now reads 5 draws. This, incidentally, was a 4th in a row at Brentford's new build home, and 7 wins apiece. Brentford's last home victory over Chelsea remains in October 1938. 1-0, the scorer Bobby Reid, dubbed back then as the Flying Scotsman. They are now managed by an inspirational Irishman in Keith Andrews, only the third man born in the Republic to take full charge of a Premier League club, after Joe Kinnear and Roy Keane. Andrews was a surprise choice, but was promoted from within, like his illustrious predecessor, Thomas Frank, who has made such an impressive start in his new post at Spurs. The Chelsea game was only his 4th ever in the so-called hot seat, and actually took place on his 45th birthday. He had spells earlier as an assistant at MK Dons and Sheffield United, for example, and worked with the Republic of Ireland FA in various capacities. As a player, he didn't win the first of his 35 Republic caps until he was 28. So previously, he's also had to wait his turn and his time. His promotion came from within after a single season with Brentford as their set-piece guru. Now, I've seen Keith at first hand working as a pundit on Sky Sports and can vouch for his communication skills, a very important tool in managing the modern-day elite player. But his greatest attribute may well be his understanding of a club that is comfortable in its own skin. There are no pretensions at Brentford, no sense of entitlement. They continually improve players and know that they will profit from that. In their own words, we make our own way. In our corner of London, we do things differently, driven by data, rooted in our community, and united by our passion for the game. In the round cake of the capital and its football, Brentford have a slice, but accept that compared to others, it's not much more than a sliver. On the night, Chelsea had to deal with the side with the highest percentage of forward passes up to that point in the Premier League this season. But not the home side's most creative player. Mikkel Damsgaard had fallen ill overnight and missed out on what would have been his 100th appearance for the club. So in simple terms, against quantity of possession and quality and depth of the opposition squad, Brentford's weapons were sharp counter-attacks and set pieces. The first put Keith Andrews' side 1-0 up, a magnificent ball from the Premier League returnee and still England midfielder Jordan Henderson. It set the speedy Kevin Schade on his way to score. And after Chelsea had strutted their stuff in the second half and gone ahead 2-1, it was Schade's long throw that created pandemonium around the Chelsea goal for Fabio Carvalho to tap in a well-deserved equaliser. Schade, one of at least 4 on the Brentford team sheet with ammunition in their arms as well as their feet. After match week 4, Brentford have just 4 points, but they are one of only 3 Premier League clubs to score in all 4 of their games, along with Liverpool and Bournemouth. Top-level football so far has delivered only a smallish number of matches with both teams scoring, about 33%. But this was the latest of those. A great watch from the G-Tech gantry, and it served up the first 2-2 draw of this Premier League season.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Brentford, is that how you see Brentford?
I just love Brentford. Every time I go there, even now, I mean, I went there when I've been in the 4 pubs on the Griffin Park.
Who hasn't?
I
think I've interviewed Stan Bowles in all 4 of them.
Yeah, I was quickly introduced to the 4 pubs when I was there as a 17-year-old by the senior pros. It's a great club. And even with the way that they've done the new stadium, they've done it really well. The build up before games, they get the music going, and it's always a tough place to go. And I always love going there. It feels like a second home for me, Brentford.
The crowd was just under 17,000, obviously capacity. Do you think they missed a trick, or do you think it is necessary to? I don't know how easy it'll be to develop it in that space. Don't you think it could now go to 23, 24,000? Do what Brighton did with the Amex.
See what Fulham come up with in 10 years' time, having now got almost an elite stadium with the sense of history on one side of the ground and the newness on the riverside with massive stand and massive prices as well.
Yeah.
So whether they're still the same Fulham that obviously you had such a great time with, and as football lovers we all respect and realise they had their own identity.
Yeah, I just think now where football's going and the stadiums, they've just got to be so careful. I mean, like Brighton, for instance, they're developing now. Fulham have, Crystal Palace have eventually. I think teams are so scared of going too big too soon and then filling the stadium that they've just got to be careful. Everyone wants to just be a well-established Premier League team, but everyone's so scared as well that they could fall down at the drop of a hat because it's getting more and more competitive.
Even Manchester City is still going bigger.
Yeah.
But who's to say? I mean, they have worked really hard on trying to fill that gap between how they were when they were in the third tier not that long ago.
Yeah. Brentford Stadium, again, I think looking at it, when it's empty, they've got the different colour seats going round. And I think that was a case of if the stadium is half empty, it will still look like it's full. Yeah. So again, it's a mindset of going, right, we need to just protect ourselves, because you never know in this industry, as quick as you're up there, you can come plummeting down.
Ability and algorithms. That's Brentford and Brighton as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great model. Yeah. It really, really is a great model. And when it works, it really, really works. But look, ultimately, it's always for the fans. Match day experience is for the fans. Stadium experience, what Fulham have done in terms of that new Riverside stand, which is phenomenal, by the way, and how they've opened it up 24/7 behind that as well. So, yeah, as long as football is slowly going towards being clinical, it can still be fun, enjoyable. Obviously, what's on the pitch at the start, but obviously anything in and around it as well is the most important thing.
Siddy, great to see you.
You too.
You look young.
Thank you.
Doesn't he look young?
This has been a weekend where I felt extremely old, and to see somebody who's just over half my age looking ridiculously young, it's great. You're in great health. It's great that you've got all this opportunity to develop, and you've taken your time to work out what the next step is. We wish you every success with that, and bless you for your time today.
Thank you very much. I know. Thank you for asking me to come on. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Steve Sidwell from Martin.
See you next time.
And me, Tara. I hope you watched it through or listened through to the end. Well, you will do if you're listening to us now, because it was just so good. Steve Sidwell, absolutely brilliant. As you can see, we're here in the Munch and Wiggles Garden, the coffee house in Oxshott, where basically Martin feeds himself all the time. But it's a great venue.
I still pay for the coffees, I promise you.
Don't forget, Patreon, get involved, subscribe, follow us, and substack.com, where of course you can read Martin and my writings. Stay tuned.